So welcome back. Welcome back to, I think, session number 9. I'm still puzzled if it's the 9th session, but it will be the second session in object-oriented programming, and I'm happy to hold a lesson today. And today we will talk about a phenomenon like component, which is very important for all the future applications, especially when we're trying to implement graphical stuff or when we try to implement bigger applications. We always have to think about a component which has the name constructor. And the constructor will be the second part of our classes, which we were talking about last week already. So I just stop the sharing and I will just share my Visual Studio. So that's fine. When we just begin with an empty or kind of empty project again from last week, this is our starting point like last week, and we were already talking about how to create classes and what are classes, what are attributes, what are objects, and what so on. And the first step to begin with creating classes and begin with talking about constructors is to create another class again. And we found out last week that you guys have different scenarios, different setups. So it can be that you have to make a new class, whether to just use add class or add new item and class. Or if you press here on the right side, adding new class, or somewhere else, it can be different. And if you're using .NET 5 or .NET 6, it looks sometimes different as well. So it's if you haven't found it out today, just look at the video last week. I will upload the last week video as well today, and just how to create a class. But we were talking about how to create classes last time, and today I'll just jump over this step and just adding a new class. Add one class. We remember that creating a new class, it should be the first letter of the class should always be a capital letter. And today I will create a class again like last time, like a human class. And as I can see, the first letter is capital. And of course, we know there are different ways to create such a class. So that's why we create it like this. If I do it with my .NET version, which is like 3.1, I can create a class like this. And as we can remember from last time, the first step filling our classes was creating attributes. If we want to create attributes, which are like the preferences of the class, we can begin with something like public string name, for instance, or we can create something like public int ID or public string ID. In most cases, the ID would be a string as well, or we could create something another attribute which is like public int maybe age, or we could create something public double weight. As we know, those little variables mark our attributes, which are our attributes of our class, because we want to create a template which is like every human has a name, every human has an age, every human has a weight, and whatsoever. So the basic idea of object-oriented programming was we want to create templates, we want to create overall structures which we can use over and over again. And because sometimes it's easier to bundle, to combine different aspects, to combine different attributes in an overall structure. So we began creating like a human class, which means like we create like something like a template. And if in order to use a human, in order to create, to generate a human, we can go back to our main program, and I uncomment this stuff because I don't need it right now. But in order to create a human now, we use the name of the class, which is human, and I call it, as we know, we have discussed it. I don't call it Peter, or I don't call it Tom. I just call it H1 maybe, and I type new human parenthesis closed, which creates a new human. And if I want to access all the attributes, I type H1 age or ID or name or weight or whatsoever. So I can access those attributes in a very easy way. And if I wanna have some interactivity, for instance, I can say, give me your, hey, welcome. Here, what's the name? What's the name of your human? Maybe something like this. Then I can of course say h1.name equals console.read line semicolon console. So I can access all the different attributes in one class by typing h1.h1. So what's h1? And we discussed it already last week as well. What's h1? h1 marks a very important step for us. h1 is an object. h1 is an object, and it's very important to understand what's a class, what's an object, what's an attribute, what's a method, and whatsoever. And of course, today, what is a constructor? What is a constructor? That's also very important. So the basic idea of a constructor is as follows, because I don't want to have some interactivity all the time, or maybe I don't want to fill out all the stuff by myself. Maybe h1.age equals 100 and h1.id equals blah, or like id blah blah, whatever. My idea is, instead of creating all the different values for my attributes, I wanna create this in one line. I wanna fill in all the different values for my attributes in one line. And I wanna do that when I create my object. So instead of creating my plain object and then filling all the different attributes again and again and again, I wanna create an object and fill it automatically or fill it directly in one line. So I wanna create something which is so-called initializing my object, which sets values to my object in the very beginning. One example which is very, very popular is, for instance, in the game development. if you want to create a playing game character and you set it to level 1, and you will give the game character 100 health points, and you will give this character a certain texture, and you will give this character certain preferences whatsoever. So if I create an empty object, this will have already some certain basic values which I wanna fill. And that's why it's so important to use something which is called a constructor. To use such a constructor is not only to initialize values, it has many more different scenarios we can use it, and it's very powerful. But today, as a first step, we want to create constructors and to show how we can initialize objects. That's what. So we want to do something like this. So how do we create a constructor? If we want to create a constructor, it's very important to understand a constructor has always the same name as the class itself. So if my class has the name human, the constructor of the class human will also have the name human. That's important. The basic structure of a constructor will always be the name of the constructor, parentheses, and curly brackets and curly brackets. And this will be the same for Java and C++ and many other programming languages. Maybe not in Python, but in C++, in Java, and C# whatsoever, this will be the same structure. In some areas or in some programming languages, it's important to tell if my constructor is public, which means I can access it from all the different places, or if it's not accessible from all different places as well. So in the first step, I will create a constructor which is accessible from all different places. So that's why I will use public, as we know. And in the first step, if we want to create constructors, it's always advisable to create a constructor which does nothing, which just is like a plain constructor doing just a plain operation, which is a so-called the basic constructor, like basic constructor, which doesn't have so much purpose, only to create an object. And if you see this structure here and go back to the main program, you will see already where we used this constructor. We use the constructor here. And if we use it with just nothing inside, which means we don't use any parameters here, we use the basic constructor here. And because we wanna create a plain object. All this stuff what I'm talking about is very important in the future. So that's why, just to understand the whole overall structure is very important for us. Okay, so I can also write something here, a comment, we call the basic constructor here. That's very important. Okay, and what does it mean? It means, please, when creating an empty object, h1, just use the basic constructor. Just create an empty object, and I want to fill out all the different attributes by myself, which is important here as well. So, but as I said, the main purpose of using as a constructor is we want to fill our different stuff ourselves. So we want to fill our stuff. So that's why I go back to my class, and in addition to my basic constructor, I create another constructor. So never delete the basic constructor and always make a basic constructor. Because sometimes you don't see that you have written something wrong because there is nothing wrong. Because sometimes it's expected to make a basic constructor. That's one. So I make another constructor now because I want to have something which initializes the name and the age of my human, which gives my human already a name and an age. Maybe I can do something else as well. I can give it a name and an ID as well, but I want to create a constructor which initializes name and age in one line. And in order to do so, I have to have my ingredients in there. I have to have my name and my age. So seriously talking, actually, it's not so important if there is like if I write string name, I can write something else. But in the beginning, it's okay if I write like int age, string name, int age. And I will talk about this afterwards as well, but just to see the structure, what we're using here, as we remember from methods, the parameters are always just local copies, which means those values are just copies all the time. So I can call it, actually, I can call it an N, and I can call it A, or I can call it name, I can call it name2, or I can call it age2, whatsoever. Why I'm doing this? Because I want to tell you that if I write name, which many people do, this name has nothing to do with the attribute name, and this age has nothing to do with the attribute age here. The attributes in here, they are inside of the class, and those stuff is just only copies of something. So it's just a placeholder for an area. So, but in my opinion, and that's how I learned object-oriented programming, I wanna differ that I'm still using something which has to do with the name, but still tell me and all the other people who look at my code that this is a copy. So it has to do something with my attribute, but it's nothing which is really important. So that's why that's just my personal taste, I use underscore name, because I learned it this way. Because underscore name tells me, okay, it's just a copy, and it has to do something with the attribute name. But it's just a copy. I could write, as I said, I could write N, okay? It doesn't matter. It's just a placeholder, okay? It's just very important that you understand it's not here, it's not the real age, okay? It's nothing, it's not the access to the real age. and I can call it underscore age as well. I will show you different versions of this stuff as well, but just in the beginning, it's just important that you remember how we were working with methods and functions, and then it's exactly the same phenomenon that we use parameters, and parameters are just local copies. Okay, I will show you the pipeline afterwards as well. So we want to create something. When we create a human, that the name and the age are filled directly into the my attribute name and age, directly into it. So the next thing, which is very important for a constructor to understand, a constructor has full access to all attributes. So which means if I type in name here, I have full access even though name is outside of my constructor. As we might remember from our methods, if I have a method here and I type x here, then x is only local visible. If I type name here or x here, it's only visible in here. So it's always very important now for us. If we use a constructor has full access to all attributes inside of a class. So which is kind of the attributes become global variables inside of a class, kind of. So I can access name now, and I can write something which looks very, very strange in the beginning. Now I can write name underscore name equals underscore name, and I can write something which is like age equals underscore age, which means when I get my ingredients from my call of my constructor, I get a value from underscore name. This value is copied to underscore name, which is at the same time copied to this position. And I wanna fill my attribute name. So that's why underscore name is copied then to the attribute name, which is inside the class. In addition, I have a copy of underscore age, which is called or generated when I use my constructor in here. And then it's copied to underscore age, which on the same position is here, underscore age. And then in addition, it will be copied into the real age, which is the attribute here. So because my main purpose of a constructor is in the very beginning to fill my attributes with certain values. And that's what I want to do. So I created the constructor now, but how do we call it? So let's call the constructor. As we have seen, we already made two constructors. So I make a new human now, human h2, whatever, h2 is equals new human, parentheses. And if I'm using Visual Studio, this will tell me I have different versions of constructors. I have a constructor which is just the basic constructor, which has empty parentheses. But it always also will tell me, you have another constructor which has the data types, string and int in this order. So I can use Visual Studio in a very wise way, and it will tell me, you can use different constructors here. So I can use my second constructor, which I generated, and I want to fill my object h2 with a name and with an age. So I can give my object already a name, maybe Tom. That's my name. And I will give my object already an age, and the age is an integer, maybe 25. So when I access h2 with name or age, name and age has already the values Tom and 25, which is here. Which I can write out, of course, okay, which I can display as well. Console.writeLine, maybe h2.age, like this, and this will display 25. And of course, I can write console.writeLine, writeLine as well, and I can write h2 dot name, of course, and like this, and this will display Tom. So I can create a constructor to initialize values, but of course I can create different constructors. I can create another constructor as well. Maybe I want to create a constructor which initializes name, age, and the ID. So I can copy my constructor, and then it's always advisable to just copy stuff which is working, never change a winning team. Just copy my constructor. The constructor has the same name, but the ingredients will differ. So in order to make a constructor which initializes 3 values, I have to create a constructor which has 3 parameters. Let's do so. Okay, I want to create a constructor with name, age, and maybe the ID as well. So string underscore ID. And I can do it like this, and I can type ID equals underscore ID. Oops. Underscore ID. Semicolon. So ID underscore ID, which tells me again, I get a local copy. When I created it, when I call it, this will be copied in here, and then I will access it directly in here. So when I create maybe another object, maybe I create another object, human h3 is equals new human parentheses, then Visual Studio is intelligent again and will tell me, oh, you can use one of those 3 constructors, and I can choose between the 3, and I will take the 3rd one at this time, and it tells us string underscore name, int underscore age, string underscore ID. But actually, if strictly speaking, our constructor only cares about the data types. So it cares about string, int, string. So for us, it's very important if we have different variants and different versions of constructors, it's very important for us to understand that if we make them distinctive, that we can make them, that we can distinguish between them. Otherwise it's not very easy for the computer. If we make 2 constructors with the same structure, maybe like string and int, yeah, but one is name and one is weight and one is name and one is age, the computer cannot know. So that's why if we create constructors, the amount of parameters and the data types are important for us. So we have a third constructor here, which has like string, int, and string. If we would have created another constructor with string, int, and string, it's impossible for the computer to understand what we should do and what's not. So that's why I use this one, string name, which tells me maybe Peter. This one is called Peter, and tell me age, which is like 30 now, and the ID is maybe blah 1 2 3, like this. And then if we created age 3, we have already filled our object with those 3 values. So if you think about a computer game in the very beginning, we have to fill out our stuff in the very beginning. And then when we load the game, maybe a constructor is called, which loads all the different stuff and which sets values to my object. So I will show it depending on the game development stuff, because in game development some things can be look a bit different. So that's why I will create another class to show the difference, what's happening sometimes when we create computer games. So I will create a new class, add class, and the class I will call the class game character, which I will always include. Game character. My spelling is just terrible as usual. So I have created a class game character, and I will give it 2 attributes. I will give it string name, public string name, and public int health, like this. And I will create a constructor. That's why I always copy this word, and I just use public game character like this. And we always begin with the basic constructor. If I have created a constructor, I can create another constructor like this, and I want to create something which initializes name and health. That's why I type string underscore name, comma, int underscore health, like this, or like this, kind of. And I can create name is equals underscore name, and health is equals underscore health. And there are many ways to create the constructor, okay? The way I do it today should help you for all programming languages. In C#, there are different ways to do it, and that's why I didn't show you the C#-like way. I showed you the way which helps you for all different programming languages, which is the same in Java, which is the same in C++. But in C# there are different ways to do a constructor as well. But in my opinion, this shows you the easiest way of the overall pipeline, where values come from, how they are stored, and whatsoever. So when I create a game character, and when I create a plain game character, in many occasions, I want to set my game character to something, even though I create an empty game character. So maybe I want to, even though I create an empty game character, I want to set my value to 100. because maybe I forgot to use my wonderful constructor here. Maybe I want to set it, and maybe if I have forgotten to use my game to set the name of my game character, maybe I want to set a default value as well for my name, or default value for my health. Maybe I want to use something like Max Mustermann in Austria or in Germany, or Ola Norman in Norway. Maybe I don't know what's the word in English, like the name in John Doe. Maybe it's John Doe probably in the States, but yeah, let's call it John Doe. Maybe it's the same. And to give it default values, that's why. And that's why it's so important for us to use it sometimes as well, especially in computer game development. We always try to have default values. And some people tend to think now the constructor is only used for initializing values. A constructor can do so much more, but just the first step of a constructor is always used as an initializer, okay, as an initializer tool. But afterwards, we can do so much nice stuff, especially when graphical stuff. We can use so much nice stuff with the constructor, which we will use already in January. So human John Doe. So if we create a game character now, for instance, we want to create a game character now. Game character G1 maybe is new game character. I just copy my stuff. As we can see, we use the basic constructor here. We use the basic constructor here, but there are no ingredients here. But if we use the basic constructor here, G1, our object G1 has already two values for the attributes name and health, because when we use the basic constructor here, we use the basic constructor, health is already initialized by the value 100 or to the value 100, and name is already set to the name John Doe, which is already in here as well. So when we create a new object, G1, and we want to initialize stuff like this, we get already values for G1. So, but of course, we can create another game character, G2 maybe, like this, new game character, and we want to set it. We want to set it to some values. Of course, we could use console write line, console read line in the very beginning, and then set all the values for my game character. Of course, we could use this, and I just want to simulate it in a very easy way. And of course, we could already create an interaction here at this certain step, but we don't do it at this moment. We will use it in the future, of course, but in the very beginning, we just want to simulate what's happening with the values. So I can write, of course, I can use, of course, stuff with my second constructor here. I can use max, and I give it a health like 2000, not 200. And so the values, when I create G2, the values max and the values 1000 are copied to the class game character. And then they look it up. Where is the constructor? The constructor is in here. Name, the constructor is in here. The value for name is max. The value for health is 1000. So max and health are just copied in here, and they will be used afterwards in here and in here. So max is copied in here, then copied in here, and then it's accessed to our main attribute inside the class. So the constructor can access all the stuff inside the class, and the same is for health. It's copied inside the class and then it's outside again. So we can access all the different attributes via a constructor. So we can use it. And of course we could have created another constructor in here. And of course we can give constructors already default values inside the parameter list. And sometimes we will miss out such constructors as well. We'll deal with all the different scenarios in the future as well. But just today, as a first step, how to create the constructor, we just make some different versions of constructors. That's what. And I just can recommend to make your own classes, make your own objects, think about attributes, make your own constructors whatsoever, because it's very important in the very beginning, this building, this creating phase, that we always do it in the very beginning, that we just get used to this building classes scenario. So that's why I will use another stuff, which like public string special ability, maybe special ability whatsoever, and I will create it in here. And as you can see, it would display an error because it has exactly the same parameters, string and int, string and int. So that's why I have to differ with my parameters here. I have to differ like string name, int health, and then I will give it another one, string int what's the third one, special ability. I will call it special ability, like this, and I will call it special ability. Oh, sorry, not underscore. Of course, we want to access this step. Is special ability like this, and is underscore special ability. Okay, that's why we have to be careful. There, as I said, there are many different ways to create a constructor, even in C#, especially in C#. How to use different ways of a constructor, I will show it next time as well, because I don't want to puzzle you guys. I think it's very important that you understand it and that we create it. So to sum up what we have learned so far, we have learned classes which make a basic template, which create basic templates, overall structures, which we can use again and again and again. And the first components we learned in the classes are attributes. Attributes are like the preferences of each class, which we can access all the time. For instance, every game character has a name, every game character has health, every car has a special amount or has a brand, every person has a name, every person has an age, and whatsoever. The second component we've learned today is a constructor. A constructor is in the very beginning used as an initializer, as an initializing tool to initialize, to set starting values to my attributes. I want to give, when I create an object, I want to give my object already a starting health, a starting name, a starting value to something. That's why we create constructors. And when I create an object, I want to create this object, and I want to create objects and setting values directly in one line. So that's why in the very beginning we use constructors. So as a next step, please create different classes, create attributes, create constructors. Try to work with them, try to already to create methods, maybe try to create reading in, reading out values whatsoever, and try to understand it, because every time we using object-oriented programming now, we have to use attributes, we have to use constructors, and soon we have to use all the basic knowledge we have learned so far, for loops, do while loops, functions whatsoever. We have to use them again and again and again, because now we're beginning to combine all our learned knowledge. So that's why it's very important that you understand the basic structure of a constructor. And please, especially when it's about programming, the only way to learn programming is by programming. So that's why I can always just show you some basic idea how it's made, what you can do, but then you should sit down and do your own stuff and try out and read and look at YouTube videos and try to combine methods and functions and loops and whatsoever, arrays and lists and all the different stuff we have learned already so far. And of course, we will deal with this stuff. We will deal with it and we will create it, but it makes stuff much easier for you in the future if you try it and work on it. The only way to learn programming is by programming yourself. I can only help you to get over this mountaintop, that you get some theory, but then please do your stuff yourself. So that's why I will finish now with my theory, and I will help all those of you who need some help. I will go to the room, to your classroom, and I will help all of you guys who need some help. So thank you. I will upload session 8 and 9 tonight, because I had some uploading problems. And thank you for being there. So I'll just stop the recording and help you out, guys.